Welcome again to another episode of the Dialed and Driven Hockey Mentality Podcast. I'm Chris Palmer, mental performance coach for hockey players throughout North America and Europe. This is Jeff Lerg. He's in charge of Goalie Mentors, created the idea of this podcast, former professional hockey player, and a guy who's developed people over years, goalie after goalie, trying to help them get where they want. Today, we've got a guest who's been on before. She's our producer behind the scenes. She has such an influence on things. She's somebody who's been not only outstanding, but she's humble and outstanding. She's strong. She speaks her mind, and it's helpful to have her here today because although she sits behind the camera, she is a driving influence on this podcast. Like every week, we're talking about things that are usable, things that are actionable. And this week, we're going to talk about this thing because people have asked about this. What does dialed and driven mean? And it's not just the name of a podcast. It actually is the philosophy of how we try to live our lives, at least in categories, to get the things we want. And we all do it slightly differently. Today, we've got Natalie with us. And one of the reasons why we have her on camera is because she contributes so much, but you never see her. She actually helps hash out things, not only the editing, but helps us really talk through, are we really accomplishing the things we want to accomplish? Because we're sitting here live in the mics, but are we getting the things done that we want to get done? So today we're going to talk about this, and I'm going to start out with my picture of dialed and driven. We sat down before this podcast ever started and really wanted to flesh out what are the things we really, really want? What are the things we want to help the world with? Because this is really important to all of us. And we must have had hundreds of different ideas, but over and over again, the same things came up. And that's being dialed and being driven seems to be the core thing that's helped all of us get what we want. And on the dialed side, the dialed is the focus. The driven is the motivation. And they work together all the time. And if you can find a way for whatever you care about, or even if you're in search of what you care about, being dialed and focused on what you want and being driven to do all the work to figure out what you want and how you want to go about it, it can change your life. So I'd love to start out with Natalie. Can you talk to us some about this? We'd love to have you share anything at all that you think helps in explaining dialed and driven.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this topic with you guys because I was obviously here from the beginning of when we brought up driven and dialed, and you both kind of came together and said, this is what I want it to kind of be about, what I want the podcast to be about. And with your side, you brought up driven and as a lot of us know, Jeff lives by being 100% dialed in. And so I really thought, like, how cool would it be to provide actionable, usable ways to youth athletes, to parents, to people that want to embody or are embodying the dialed and driven concept. So I think let's really dive into kind of how we believe these topics are usable and actionable.
Yeah, so I have a story that really explains it. So, and it's close to me because it's with my little 2-year-old daughter. Okay, so we're at the school carnival last weekend, and I like to rave about this little one because she takes more after me. And so I'm kind of getting her lined up with the games they have, and the worker, the little teenage girl, gives my daughter the little bean bags, and the task that she's telling her what to do is throw the bean bag in the hole. There's a board, there's 3 holes on it. She kind of like sets her a few feet back, and then this is the definition of dial. Gets the bean bag, chucks it through the hole with her right hand, takes the next bean bag with her left hand, chucks it through another hole, gets the third bean bag, 3 for 3. Like, I could not have been more proud, but that's the definition. Like,
she's dialed.
She is so dialed. You know the task, you execute at the highest level of what the task entails. So that's the definition of dialed.
And yet she's 2 years old and already embodies it. And I think that's the coolest thing ever because she doesn't even know what being dialed in is. And she's already doing it at 2 years old.
Yeah. And so that's really what it is, though. You have something you're setting out to do, and you do it at 100% execution of what the task is. But the difficulty comes in, like, to all the athletes and kids, how can you do it consistently? Like, do you have the ability to do it consistently? I've said it before, everyone can be great on one special night. But that's really what dialed is. And then we've talked about how it has to extrapolate into every endeavor that you go about your day with.
Well, I forgot to mention real quick for the guys watching us on YouTube, you can't help but be distracted by my nose. I've got a couple nice gashes on my nose, and I even thought about putting makeup on it. My daughter's like, don't do that. If you're going to be honest on the podcast, be honest. And this happened walking my dog, by the way, just so it's not a big distraction for everybody. Talk about a dog being dialed. The dog is totally focused on attacking every other dog or person who's out on the walk. And it's the sweetest dog, a little Boston Terrier. But I had this habit of going down to him really close and saying, it's okay, trying to calm him down. And apparently it wasn't okay. I must have breathed in his ear or something. He snapped and got my nose. And there was blood going everywhere. I mean, it was like a crime scene. And all I had was like this polyester dry fit stuff on, and I couldn't stop the blood, and I didn't know what was going on. To try to figure out where I was, I had to take the sock off my foot to try to do something that's cotton, just to do something to get enough of it away to see what's going on. But
side note, Chris and I live in the same neighborhood too, so it would have been interesting if I was out with the family walk.
Yeah, don't ever have your daughters anywhere near.
Seeing you pulled over on the side of the road.
Oh, Chris, are you okay? No,
I know. No, it was crazy. His blood was everywhere. It was nuts. But anyway, going back to this thing, I always tend to go big picture. I tend to go to the outside. And I know that if you look at kind of a chart of all human beings, not many people are dialed. I mean, they're categorically, like if you have to do this thing, you'll figure out how to do it. But I don't run into many people who are dialed in. And I think that's because life's hard sometimes. Over the majority of people, if you look at that kind of bell curve, the bulk of people are just kind of surviving. And just to prove that, look at a gas station and all the stuff they offer. Sweet, salty, crunchy, all the things that are available to make you feel better in life. And some of it's awful, but they understand people. Most people have a hard time, and I understand that. But there's a big life that's available for you, at least in categories, if you actually ask your heart, soul, spirit what you want to do in these 70 or 80 years you get to live here. And if you really think about that, you find something you actually give a crap about, and you go for that. If you are dialed in and focused on that, and it's for your reasons, and if you find a way to be driven for this thing that's uniquely you, everything changes. You get everything. Well, if you don't get everything, you have a chance of getting everything you want. And that's why I do this. So for me, dialed and driven, although I've never used the words together, it was such a great thing because it really does define what I think is the formula for having a life that feels like a life.
So what would you say driven means to you? Since you brought the driven aspect, how does that differ from Jeff's dialed or what you view as being dialed in?
Oh, yeah. So I am definitely a guy who is categorically dialed and categorically driven. Like I'm a psycho about making sure that my kids have a good life and not coddling them, but helping them through things. I am a complete psycho about all this stuff in coaching. Those are two things I care about more than anything in the world. And I'll be up at 2 a.m. If I get a call at 2 a.m. for something that's really, really important for somebody, I'm happy to get that. Sessions aren't over in 50 minutes. They take the time they take. And sometimes they've been 2 and 3 hours, and it's what it is. So I'm a complete crazy man in my intensity and my focus for that. But in other categories, I'm not. Like, I don't care about a lot of other things, but there are people like Jeff, and I think to some degree like you, that, man, like every category, it's just eat it up. Like it's like a video game where, there's some more things over here. Like every single thing, he's so excited about everything, whereas I'm categorically excited and intense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would like to elaborate it more on the fact of I kind of see this dialed and driven aspect of being competitive. I think that might be something that people also view it as, is like being competitive in everything and giving it 100% in everything. And although being competitive and giving your 100% kind of can be different things, how would you explain as you being categorically dialed and driven with maybe you being competitive for some things, or you actually really caring about some things, or you just being naturally good at something? What do you say could differentiate categorically between all those different aspects of dialed and driven?
Yeah, so I say early in my life, I found sports as a way to give me self-esteem. I had none. First 13 years, I thought it was a piece of crap. And I met this great coach, which I talked about before, who changed my life. He taught me it's always your thoughts. And he taught me that you can build belief through evidence. And it's what I coach now. But I was a guy who was very, very competitive in that time to feel like I had some kind of value. And so to me, that's what competition was for me.
Just in sports.
in sports. Yeah, it wasn't very healthy. And I imagine there might have been other things, but I just really remember it in sports. And sports gave me my self-esteem early on because it was the first thing that I was actually good at. But after a while, after I got some success, I was All-American twice. I got 4th and 11th in the country. I was sponsored by Nike. I worked for Nike. I handmade a shoe for an interview for a footwear position at Nike with Tinker Hatfield, the guy who makes the Jordans. I didn't get the job, by the way. But I really, really have had a great life in terms of this kind of competitive trying to be something. But I got to a point where I no longer had to fill that part of me. That's what competition was for me. It's not that for everybody, but for me, it was self-esteem. And once I had enough of that, then it just became searching for what I want to spend my life doing. And I found that I loved giving back that feeling of belief to people the way I had it. It's almost like reliving that whole thing. It's like the alcoholic who gets past it with AA and opens up an AA chapter. I was the guy who felt like I was nothing and then learned I could be something and learned I could be happy and have a life. It was awesome. So to me, competition was the dialed at first. But then once I got enough things, like, okay, well, did I need that to prove who I am? And I started more on the, what do I think I'm uniquely built for? And I found a way to really help people get that same belief in themselves. So to me, it's not competition now. It's just, don't waste the time you have. Don't waste the time you have. Make everything you have. Be alive. That kind of a thing.
Yeah, and I think that's beautifully explained. And I really like the way that you said competition and being competitive gave you that strive to be great and be dialed in sports early on. And then once that chapter of your life closed and you were no longer an athlete in college or even maybe going the professional route, you found that there's other things in life that you care about. And I'd really like Jeff to explain how he could either relate to that or provide a different aspect through his experiences and way that he kind of got into sports.
Well, Chris, if you guys listen, Chris always just raves about how dialed in I am and everything I do. And I have this high level of greatness expectation, but he doesn't really know, like there's many times through the course of my life and just in every endeavor, I'm like a sitting duck on top of the water where I'm just cool as calm as can be to the public, but I'm just paddling 1,000 miles an hour underneath. You know, that's really that's my daily life. That's how I live. That's how I operate. And as a kid, I remember growing up, I was taught that as a goalie, don't ever let the other team think they got the best of you. So that was my MO. Like I let up a goal from the red line and act like nothing happened.
Yeah,
you know,
that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, like just in practice, if I was having a bad practice, I was never the one like slamming my stick and going crazy. Like that was my kind of trick as I got to the higher levels. Like just never make it appear like I'm rattled. And, you know, a guy was playing at the pro ranks, and obviously we talked about having this kind of short anomaly of a goalie. So, of course, I was getting chirped all the time. You know, I remember in playoffs one time at the red line, and guys were just screaming at me in my ear about how they're going to light me up and run you over and blah, blah, blah. And, like, every time there was a whistle, they're coming in full speed, like trying to poke me. And then at the end of the day, I'm shaking their hand in game 7. Hey, good series, you know? So right. After a win, obviously. But yeah, like I took a lot of pride in that. Like never let anyone think that I have an issue, because that just, obviously it's giving you the facade that I'm always dialed and everything, which the other avenue of that is I kind of became accustomed to, like, the success isn't always exciting. A lot of times it's boring. You know, it's just like every day I'm in the gym, every day you're giving your best at practice. And it's some part of that is just accepting that there is boredom to just being dialed. It's not always this amazing life story. You just got to do your best and everything, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And that's where the discipline comes in. And I think Dialed and Driven also embodies discipline, because that's a huge aspect in terms of how you're going to get success and how you're going to reach those goals. But I think it's funny, Jeff, that you mentioned that you like to have this calm aspect to you and you don't like others to see you rattled, because I very much became who I am as an athlete and eventually as a person through that. Like I hated slamming sticks. If somebody slammed their stick, I remember when I was probably like 8 years old, I had a goalie partner one time, like it was a game, he got pulled and I went in and he turned around, slammed his stick, broke it, flew everywhere. It's when wood sticks still existed. And the whole bench was just like, and the coaches were like, and the other team was like, And everyone was like, what is going on? And I mean, you're a goalie, so it's a spotlight on you. And I think that's also something is I don't like to be the center of attention. And so me giving that calmness, even as a goalie, like I did not want any more attention on me than there had to be. So that's just another avenue that I think really provides a bit more of a definition and in depth to the words. Do you guys have anything else?
That's like who you are now. Like, that's just who you are. Like, I never know if you're flustered or focused. If we're talking about work stuff, I don't know. Did she not like that next little hit list task that we talked about, or is she just in the zone of doing it? But that's really, I mean, that's why we get along, because we're the same, where it's like, okay, what's the next problem up? Let's go and do it. And obviously we may be rattled underneath or working through headaches that we're trying to figure out. But no, but that's really the definition is that you're dialed in on what's the task ahead of you. And we threw driven in because you have to be driven through all the adversity. It's going to be in work and sports and workouts and in your career, your youth career, not that it's a career yet, but your youth athletics where you're getting cut, but you still really want to keep playing. Then what are you going to stay driven and get into your next goal? And that's, of course, as we get to know more about you, Natalie, we start to see that what you were probably like as a youth athlete. None of us were around to watch you play all the time, but your characteristics come out in all this.
Yeah. You said this interesting thing, and it's such a great thing for people watching and listening. Sometimes it is boring to be dialed. Sometimes it is boring, and sometimes it's hard to keep that high level of motivation. So whether it's hard to stay dialed because there's other things that pull you away, or boredom, or whatever else of that kind of discipline, or whether it's some days you don't have quite the same drive to do it for whatever reason. I mean, things happen. I mean, I just talked to a guy who lost his grandmother. He had, very understandable lack of drive to go jump and do things because he's nursing his wounds on that. And it takes a while. You love somebody, you care about them, bad things happen. People lose their dogs. I mean, it's not easy to stay completely dialed and completely driven. But the great thing about the idea of those two words, and this is something that I think is so valuable, is that some days you might be really focused, but and you know what you need to do, but you just don't really, you're not really ready to do that. And finding some reason to go back to that, finding that core drive to get back to that is your way to make it work. And they're constantly helping each other. But when it comes down to it, we're human beings. And one of the reasons why Instagram Reels or TikTok is so interesting is because it appeals to our love of dopamine, our love of something new and fresh. When I was a kid, we didn't have this. We had TV shows, and they were half-hour TV shows. And you could argue that those half-hour TV shows rotted our brains with simplicity and goofiness and, Batman climbing a building and making jokes and doing things. So we had those screens then. It was just less accessible. And there was a lot of joy. I remember lying on the floor watching TV when Batman came out at 5:30 in the afternoon. It was great after school. But now it's not just Batman. It's, hey, puppies. Hey, look at this guy jumping off a cliff. Look at this guy, jumping without a parachute. He's got a wingsuit. Oh my gosh, is he going to die? So there's all these things that are so exciting, and it's all what makes up a life. It really does. Like, you've got your whole life, and man, 7-8 decades is what you have. How are you going to spend your time? Are you, when you're 60 or 70 years old, going to regret how you spent your time? And that's the great thing. If you can jump out, whenever you're in this kind of funk, you can jump out for a second and say, what is this all about? What do I really believe in the center of who I am? And that's where you come up with something that you want to do, you're dialed to do, and then you can be driven for that. And unless you're assessing yourself when you get in those little slumps and deciding, what is this all about for me? You're not going to have a life that you're proud of. And so I'm not talking about, hey, go be an NHL guy. It's great if you want to be that. Go be a D1, collegiate athlete, playing pro, whatever the thing is. Those things are great, but they're only great if you really want them and there's a reason, there's a purpose. And otherwise, it's just stuff. You might as well just go try archery or try bowling or try whatever. They're all just as legitimate ways to spend your life. So finding a way to really assess your life and decide, what do I want? And if you're hitting your head somewhere and you're getting kind of bored and it's not really for you, maybe you lost the love because there's a problem, or maybe you lost the love because you really yearn to do something else. And we all have stuff in the middle of our heart, soul, spirit that we're sometimes afraid to say. And to me, figuring out what you want, asking yourself, would I be proud of what I'm doing now? That just helps you figure out what you're dialed and driven to do.
Well, I really like that you keep saying, figure out what you want to do, because You brought up something earlier about how, as a kid, you really liked sports. And growing up, obviously, I'm younger than you guys, but that was kind of the introduction of phones and more technology. So there was a lot more accessibility on having your children try new things. And my parents getting me and my twin brother into hockey because there was a rink down the street. Well, nowadays, your parents could look up nearest rink, or parents can look up nearest rink to me, and that could be an idea sprouted of, let's get my kids into hockey. Well, like me growing up, my dad was a water skier. My dad did a lot of outdoorsy things. So naturally, that's what we were doing already. I was doing water skiing. I was doing water sports. My dad was super into sports. So sports were always something that me and my brother naturally did all of the time. Whereas nowadays, everyone has a phone, really, really young. They can look up anything that they want. Let's say someone wants to do water polo or archery, like you were saying. That was not a very common thing to do unless you had a parent or a friend in it now. So I think if you're looking to find something that you care about or you want to try, it's very accessible now with the help of technology, which brings a whole nother aspect to this of your life's endless. Your life choices are endless. You can do whatever you want. And there's so much more education and research and just things out there for people to try over and over again. You can try and you can hate it. I just got into golf, not very good at it. And that's something that's really hard for me to accept because I like to be so competitive and so good at something. And for arguably once in my life now, I'm bad at something, and it's really hard for me.
I love it. We got to clip that. She's bad.
Yeah, that I'm bad at golf, but I want to be good at it. And it's something that now I have to take the back seat on and go through the path of development through golf and actually listen to things and look up on TikTok how to improve my swing, how to improve my putts, what can I actively do. But before then, you had to go to a coach and you had to look up all these other aspects and only get the information from the people you know unless you find some type of coaching elsewhere.
Well, that's the trick, though, is you're going to find all this. Like all these athletes now, we have so much information.
Yeah.
Like, so half the time you don't know if it's good or bad. You can be following some guy who's never played golf before.
Yeah, it could be.
But he's got all the lighting doctored up. He's got everything he wants. He got all the facade in the background. He looks like a professional. Mm-hmm. So that is a trick where it's like, okay, what are you actually learning? And then the key is, though, for the kids and everyone like you, are you applying it? Is it working? And then being that kind of student of your sport, like, okay, if that's not working, what can work? And that's really where the theme of our episode, our whole podcast is like, do you know what you're working on? And then do you execute at the highest level? Like if you watch some guy who's giving you all these tips, or girl, and you don't get any better, you know, what is it, you or is it them?
Yeah.
And do you actually know? And
there's your answer.
Yeah, there's your answer. You know, are you really dialed in on it? Because there's the law of 10,000 hours. The more you do something, the more proficient you'll become. You know, I can shoot the puck like a college D1 player sometimes because I've spent hours and hours and hours on the ice stationary shooting at goalies. By no means could I play at that level, but that's just how many hours it takes to get good at something. And really with that, like that's the delayed gratification loop that has to happen in sports. So you're not going to become a good golfer by next week.
No.
Right? There's so much time and energy and discipline and all those things that go into it. And that's where those hours just keep adding up and adding up and adding up. And for me, that's why I don't even play golf anymore, because I only have so much time to get good at a few things in life. And, you know, it's a commitment.
And I think that brings a lot of self-awareness in it too, because I'm self-aware that maybe I can drive really well because it kind of mimics shooting a hockey puck, but everything else, like I have to take a step back, and my self-awareness is I might have some really good shots and I think I'm doing so good and I keep doing the same thing over and over again. Am I getting better? No, I just get lucky. And there's that aspect of it too.
Your own luck.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And I think that goes with a lot of different ways of learning things and teaching yourself maybe how to do things. And when you end up liking a sport in hockey, like I didn't have goalie coaching until I was probably 15 or 16 years old. And in order for me to get to that next level, I had to be coached. I had to let that guard down of me trying to be in control and teaching myself everything. And then eventually I can only teach myself so much. So that's when you also have to be open to allowing someone else to provide that dialed and drivenness to your already dialed and drivenness.
I talked about having a boss years ago. I was in sales in the banking industry, and my boss said that motivation came from discipline. And it's interesting. And I think it sounds really good. It should be a book. But when it comes down to it, that's why it's so important to like really figure out, like, what do you want? Have your reason to do it. And you would love how it's felt over the course of your career to just go bust your ass and make something happen. And that's kind of what you like. You like doing that. And with your kids, you like doing that. The whole thing is you have this love of how it feels to bust your butt, sacrifice, and get a reward. You love that. You loved, you said, kind of trying to have some control of things and actually go out there and accomplish things. And life isn't crazy town. And for me, it was self-esteem, right? We all had our reasons. We all have our reasons. And this whole thing of trying to be dialed and driven artificially doesn't work. It really has to come from this core thing where I want this. And you can't know what you want if you constantly have information shot at you. So you got your phone 2, 3, 6 hours a day shooting information at you. It'd be great if you could just find even 5 minutes a day where you just sit and go, what do I really want? What do I really want my life to be? And it's hard when you're 12, 13, 14 years old. It's hard when you're used to doing what everybody tells you what to do, which is what it is as a kid. So the hard thing, and this is for parents and kids, if you're a parent and you're trying to help your kid and you're sending your kid down a path, it's great. But if something happens where you feel like your kid's pulling his foot off the gas or her foot off the gas and isn't quite as motivated, something happened. This is kind of no longer for this kid's reasons. And the kid may love it, but something's happening where the kid's not driven organically. And it's so hard to live what other people think you should do. And the magic trick is trying to find ways to get even a little bit of your life about what you truly want to do and you truly would be proud of. And then the dialed and driven just helps that turn into this giant thing. Seriously, that's been the story of our lives in categories. And I love that because it's a chance for people to change their lives and actually have a life that feels like a damn life.
I think really one of the key teaching lessons here, one of the key points is structure is needed at some point. High-performing people all have this sense of structure. For me, we talked about athletically now as I've kind of navigated to post-playing career and working in doing things like this. I've now kind of taken what I've learned with the structure, and now what's working for me is I love time frames. I love, like, a lot of times, when I was getting married, my cousin made the joke, like, this guy probably knows what he's doing 12 years from now at this exact time and date, because that's how structured I was. That's how I've always been. Like, they would ask me if I wanted to go out for a movie or something, et cetera. I said, nope, I'm studying from 3 to 5 p.m., whatever it was. So now I take that same approach where 5:50 a.m. to 6:10 a.m. I'm working on this, and that's in my calendar now. 6:10 to 6:30, I'm working on this. 6:30 to 7:10, I'm in the gym. And then, 7:20, get the girls to school. So now I like to schedule those out, but that's just how I operate. That's just how I know the distractions will go away because I have to be there. So one key point for all those youth growing up, those distractions are dinging on my phone all the time. Like, it's phone turned upside down, and this is what I'm doing during this point. And then you keep chipping away, and time will evolve. And then those things you're working on will take care of themselves.
Since you're not here all the time, is there anything you'd like to say as kind of a last thing to people watching? And just remember, there's kids who've been busting their butt for a long time, and maybe they're into it, and maybe they're not. Some of the people listening are lost, trying to figure out, how can I make this work? Gosh, I wanted this my whole life. What would I be if hockey doesn't work out? Is there anything you'd want to share since you're here?
I think something that you guys bring up a lot is having that structure, but you also have to take into account your own personal accountability on things. And I really like that, Jeff, you brought up that you have this schedule for yourself, because I was kind of the same way in a sense where I allocate this amount of time for me. But I think and I would break it because I'm not as driven in that aspect as you.
You got some years to learn it.
Yeah. But it's also a fact of, are you actually seeing those results from the discipline and self-accountability that you're giving yourself to hit your goal in a timely manner? Because you could be, again, studying and you have a final exam at the end of the semester, but you have to get each chapter in so that you can ace that exam or that final at the end of the semester. If you cram it all in the night before or the week before, which I've done a few times, and sometimes I get lucky, sometimes I don't. But if you're preparing back when you should be, that test and your anxiety and your fear of failing is going to be a lot less because you did the things leading up to it to get there. And I think that's a really big point, that there is a lot more success when you prepare for something and you have self-accountability and you have discipline and you do the things that need to be done in a timely manner to reach that goal. But the biggest aspect of everything that I'm saying is that looking back at when I was an athlete, when I was a college athlete, I put myself in so many experiences to be able to learn so many skills and so many different opinions on things and ways of life, and how skills and how the way people think can be added into finding that discipline, finding that self-accountability. And I think reflecting on what skills can I put here, what skills can I put there, and trying as many different sports as possible, you can see what skills and what things in life that you learn that you don't just get in hockey, or you don't just get in baseball, or you don't just get in school, or playing lacrosse, or theater. You learn so many different things with so many different types of people because nobody thinks the same. But if you're only playing one sport, you're usually surrounded, or you're only doing one thing, not doing theater, not doing extracurricular activities, you're not getting all these different mindsets and all these different ways of thinking to put yourself in a position to be more dialed in something. And I just think putting yourself in different life experiences is very important, and putting yourself in different scenarios through possibly other sports, extracurricular activities, meeting new friends that maybe you wouldn't go and talk to in the beginning, is the best way to really get the full aspect.
I agree. And if you look at some of the guys you talk to, when they hit their head on something, girls hit their head on something where, man, like, maybe I'm not going to make this career I wanted. And the underlying thing over and over again, I say like 95% of the time, it's if I'm not that, then what am I? Because I'm a hockey player. If I'm not that, what am I? And that's tragic. And honestly, like, there are people who've had hockey careers and Stanley Cup trophies who feel like, well, what am I now? And you're right. You can be all kinds of things in your life, and exposing yourself to other things and having different interactions with people helps you figure out, what are all the things I like? How do I want to live this life full of all these choices? You're so right. So please, just to wrap this up, please, 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 try to decide how you want to live your life. Try to decide the kind of life you have. Is it what you want? Decide what you want. And just know that once you get kind of an idea of that, and like Nat said before, there's a whole world available online. You can look at a million things. You can be a goat farmer. You can be like, there's a million things you can do. And you might find something that's just so intriguing. That's how you want to spend your life. And whatever that is, if you decide to be so focused and so dialed on what you want the entirety of your life, and so driven for this thing because it's what you truly want, that dialed and that driven aspect work together in harmony with how you want to spend your life to get a life that feels like a life, to get a career that feels like a career, to get a family, happiness, friendship, whatever those things are. And that's why we do this.
Yeah, and thanks, Natalie, for coming on. Obviously, you have awesome life experience in sports, and you get to hear us talk week after week. So we're going to continue to try to get some feedback, bring you on more. And lastly, really with that, don't mistake the activity for development. Like, everyone can do a lot of activities, but if you're not dialed in, you're not getting better. So as a reminder, dialed and driven is understanding the task and executing that task at 100% efficiency and output. So to all of our listeners, thanks again for listening this week. Remember to stay dialed and stay driven on your goals, as that's the only way to accomplish success.
One of the things you'll notice in our podcast is that we don't self-promote. We're not telling people, hey, come work with us. But there's people who have wanted to work with us. And I had a client recently say it was really hard to figure out how to get us. So just to let you know, we actually can be contacted for help in anything in the world of hockey, goalie or not, and on the mental performance side. And you can find that in the episode description on whatever format you're picking up our podcast.
You will ever see keeps this game alive.
Chris Palmer again, the Hockey Mentality Podcast, Dialed and Driven.